This is the Silver Wolf Howl. I am Angela, and today we're talking train and vehicle accidents with Noel. Welcome, Noel. So you are on the other side of the interview desk today. Last time you did the interviewing, and so you the interviewee today. But anyway, welcome and thanks for sharing your time.
Oh, hello there, and hello to all the listeners. Nice to be back.
Yeah. So we're gonna be picking your brain today on train and car accidents. Okay, so we're gonna try and cover as many of the questions that we've got as possible. So I hope your brain is pickled and ready for action. Okay, I think let's start with what are we meaning when we say train and car accidents. Let's start maybe with train accidents. Simply, what is that?
It is any untoward incident that happens on a train line involving a train or any moving transport that goes over the line.
Okay, and then a vehicle accident?
Much the same thing, except it happens on roads instead of a track.
I think the first question that comes to my mind is a train accident, because I mean we all used to vehicle accidents because we probably because we experience it more often. How does a train even have an accident? I mean, it's not like vehicles on a road. There's two or three vehicles in a small area at any given time. I mean, trains are big things. They've got this whole track. They're not more than one on within a reasonable amount of distance. So how do trains actually have accidents? Maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
Well, many of the rules and regulations and many of the scientific principles are the same for both. Uh, Especially scientific principles involving forensic rules like going too fast around a bend, or brakes not working properly, or disobeying a speed limit. All of these things affect both. There are a lot of similarities. Of course, with trains, you also have other factors like they take a far greater load, so trains are intrinsically heavier than cars. Um, and that, of course, also changes things when it comes to things like speed and going around a bend and that kind of thing. So essentially, there are differences and there are similarities between the two.
Okay, so it's not what we would think traditionally as one car crashing into another when it comes to trains. So this could involve all sorts of other things, and probably more likely those aspects that you mentioned now rather than two trains crashing into each other.
Well, interestingly, there are still instances of two trains crashing into one another, but the difference is there. When it comes to cars, that generally happens because somebody disobeyed a law. For example, somebody may have gone through a red traffic light or something like that. When it comes to trains, it might be because the person operating the switches that change a train from one track to another may have made a mistake, and they've got a train already on the track, and they switch another train onto the wrong track and the two collide. That does happen, but it is less common in trains than it is in cars.
All right. Okay, so I'm with you. I understand a bit clearer now. So how do you get involved with these kinds of things? Like what does Silver Wolf do for a train derailment? Let's start there.
Generally speaking, it starts with an insurance claim. Most freight loads that go on trains in South Africa um, are insured by overseas companies simply because they are companies that are able to insure the freight all the way from where it gets loaded to its ultimate destination in another country, and generally that includes being on a ship going on the sea. So that is basically how it all starts.
All right, and then how does Silver Wolf get involved in?
So what'll happen is that the insurance companies will pay out. There'll be a claim, and the insurance companies will pay out. The insurance companies will then look to see with whom the fault lies in the incident. Note, I'm not calling it an accident. The reason it's an incident is because something caused it, and our job is to find out what caused it. When the attorneys representing the insurance company will call upon us to go and find out what or who was the cause of the incident, how the accident came about. And there I call it an accident. It might well be one, but we have to find out. We have to find out things like, was there a lack of maintenance? Was there driver error? Did the driver, for example, fall asleep? Was there something wrong with the train other than maintenance issues? Were laws disobeyed? There are all sorts of things that can contribute to such an incident.
Are there any differences when it comes to South Africa in terms of the causes of these accidents? Are there any specific challenges or any specific types of derailments that happen in South Africa that are not likely to occur or very much less likely to occur in other parts of the world?
There are basically three aspects. One is the maintenance of rails, which in this country is sadly lacking. The rails get repaired, there are repair crews, but the inspection of rails does not happen in the way that it happens in other countries. An example would be one of the railways in North America that I studied, where every kilometer, or they call it mile, every mile of track is inspected by a specially adapted vehicle with a crew and this vehicle has x-rays in its undercarriage and things like that inspect the tracks minutely every kilometer 3 times a day. That simply doesn't happen here. They get inspected, but they get inspected with the eye pretty much, and they have hardly any of these special adapted vehicles, and they're simply doing repairs with these vehicles. That is aspect number one. Aspect number two is driver training. The driver training overseas is vastly different to what happens here, and a part of the reason for that is that most of our equipment is outdated. So our drivers are dealing with very old equipment. Our newest locomotives on most of our freight rail routes are in the region of 28 to 30 years old. Then the third aspect is that we're the only country in the world where our trains still use vacuum braking systems. They have been declared obsolete in every single other country on earth. So we are now the only country in the world that is left that has the capability to repair these systems, and these systems are extremely open to being fiddled with if somebody wants to damage a train or derail a train. They have open access to aspects of these braking systems that they can just use.
And has that happened?
Yes, we did a case last year where part of these braking systems is a valve called an angle cock. There's an angle cock at the front and back end of every locomotive and at the front and back end of every wagon in Transnet Freight Rail's fleet. And that is, those angle cocks operate the vacuum braking system. Essentially, if that angle cock gets turned the wrong way, the brakes get switched off for the rest of the train going backwards from that point. So basically, all one has to do is walk past the last locomotive, go to the angle cock in front of the first wagon, and this is what happened on this one particular case, turn the angle cock, disappear, and you're done.
So that sounds like it makes these trains quite vulnerable then. And those would then be probably the key aspects in a lot of these derailment cases or situations then. How do you collaborate with law enforcement or other parties that have some sort of interest or involvement in these train derailments? I know that with passenger trains they have policing services for that. Are there similar policing services for cargo trains as well? And what role do they play in these investigations that Civil gets involved with?
The simpler answer would be there are security companies that are involved with aspects of the freight rail systems in South Africa, but they simply cannot cover every mile of track. And that is where the problem comes in. There are no security officers that ride with the trains like there are in the passenger side of things. So you've got trains that are going between stations, between cities, between towns that are vulnerable. And there are no other security measures along the tracks. The way the system works here is that certain crews from certain depots take the train for a certain distance. They then meet another train coming the other way from the next depot. They stop literally sometimes in the middle of nowhere, swap crews, and the crew then takes the other train back towards their depot. So that is how the trains progress. They stop at certain places along their route, all along the route, to receive a new crew from the train going in the opposite direction. At these stops, there is no security, and many of the stops are in high crime areas with no fencing along the railway lines or any of that. So people can cross the lines freely, they can have free access to the standing trains, and they can access, for example, those angle cocks without being seen.
Okay. That sounds like it's quite a problem, to say the least. Okay, let's jump over to vehicle accidents. How do they work, and in terms of what kind of assistance do you get or cooperation do you get from law enforcement, etc., when you have to do a vehicle accident investigation?
We generally get very good cooperation because the South African Police Service and the local traffic authorities are generally done with the case by the time we receive it. So they generally make their records very easily accessible by us and to us. We usually receive full copies of all their reports, etc. The problem often arises that not all South African Police Service officers are necessarily as trained as one would like, and they're quite open about this in accident investigation. Therefore, the records that they create at the time of the accident are not necessarily complete. And when we get involved, which is often up to a year or 2 or 3 or 4 later, in some cases it's been much longer than that, we have to often recreate the evidence around the accident. We have to find witnesses possibly that the police services never found. We have to find other evidence that they possibly may not have found. And that gets very difficult because of the time lapse.
Yeah, yeah. So talking about time, what is the oldest vehicle accident that you've worked on so far?
21 years.
Wow. Okay. That's a little bit of time. Okay. And then let's talk about witnesses. I'm talking about specifically with vehicle accidents. Something that is that old. Do you still find witnesses? Are they still able to remember stuff if you do find them? Talk to me a little bit about that.
We do find them, but it can be very difficult. We were. There's always an element of luck involved in these things, to be blunt. And in one particular case, we got really lucky because one of the vehicles involved in the incident was an intercity bus. And we happened to find some of the passengers, particularly some of the passengers that were sitting upstairs in the bus. And that made a tremendous difference because they had a bird's eye view of what actually happened. And that made a massive difference. But we've had many other instances where the witnesses recorded in the police report have since passed away or since left the country or things like that. And that has made life very difficult for us. Similar thing, very often one looks for security camera footage, especially where an accident happens in a town or a city. But 21 years later, that evidence doesn't exist anymore.
So what do you do in that situation?
You have to look for other options, more witnesses. You have to look at the forensics of the accident to see if there's any physical evidence left. An example would be that 21-year accident. It was forensics that saved the day because one of the witnesses remembered that the vehicle, there were two identical cars that came out made by different manufacturers at that particular year, which was 1991. The one was an Audi and the other one was a Passat, but the vehicles were almost identical and their parts, many of their body parts were interchangeable at that time, just that particular model. And what they remembered was that in the accident, the front grille of the vehicle was found lying in the road. And when we found the vehicle, which we've managed to find the vehicle after 21 years, we found the vehicle with a replacement front grille from the other model, from the other car that had been installed. It was an Audi and it had the front grille replaced with a Volkswagen grille that fitted on that particular vehicle. So the forensics there fit with the case and assisted us in that instance.
Okay, so it sounds like there's more than one thing because a lot of times we think, oh, okay, if you don't have a witness, then the case is unsolvable. But what you're basically saying is, as an investigator, you just keep looking and finding all of these other bits and piecing the puzzle together as best you can with the pieces that you're not finding as easily. You go and search for pieces to fit in that puzzle.
The analogy to a puzzle is actually a very good one. The answer to that is yes, that's exactly how we do it. There are many, many different aspects to an incident or an accident. And you've got to turn over every stone. So you've got to look at the forensics at the same time as looking for witnesses, at the same time as looking for camera footage, at the same time as looking at the police reports, at the same time as, and it goes on.
Yes.
Um, there's almost an endless amount of so-called stones to turn over and look under.
Okay. All right. So, if you compare the two, vehicle accidents and train derailment or train accidents, what are the similarities, the biggest similarities that you've discovered?
The biggest one is speed.
Okay.
Biggest the accidents in both instances are very largely caused by excess speed.
Okay. And negligence, do you find that to be a factor as well?
It's the second biggest factor in both.
Okay. All right. And then what are the huge differences, the biggest differences between the two?
The weight of the vehicles,
Okay.
and also that the vehicles on a road, cars, trucks, etc., are not. They don't have wheels that force them to stay on a particular track, so therefore in one line of travel. That's one of the biggest differences, that a car on a road can turn anywhere which a train can't.
Oh, okay. So they have more variables with a vehicle as opposed to a train.
That's correct.
Oh, okay. All right. And also, I mean, you need to be a certain person with certain qualifications to operate a train, where any person with a driver's license can drive a vehicle. So it's not as specific as operating a train.
Yeah. One of the big similarities between the two different types of incidents is lack of maintenance.
Okay.
Whether it's trains, whether it's cars, whether it's planes, whether it's any other type of vehicle, lack of maintenance causes accidents.
That
And
is key.
and also just a lack of wisdom and a lack of knowledge on the parts of those maintaining the vehicles. A classic example would be putting the wrong tires on a vehicle.
Yeah.
The different vehicles operating in different circumstances, different types of weather, different speeds, different loads,
Yeah.
take different tires.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you've got to use the right one. If you're using a truck that's going to take a 50-ton load, you're going to cause accidents if you have the wrong tires.
Ah, okay. Yeah, so the vehicle and the operator need to be in tip-top shape, but also correct vehicle, correct driver, correct parts, correct everything, to optimize safety with both types of transportation.
And yes, and then there's another aspect that you mentioned, the driver. The driver has to be properly rested.
Yeah.
So the laws regarding hours that a driver may be on the road have to be strictly enforced. If they are not, drivers falling asleep are common causes of accidents in all aspects, in all types of transport.
So you sound like you enjoy these types of investigations. I mean, obviously there are circumstances that are not good, but finding the truth and finding out what happened seems to satisfy you quite a bit in terms of these investigations.
It's really a thing about closure for me. I know that even though I'm doing the work for an attorney representing an insurance company, somebody's going to get some closure out of this. Maybe somebody who was injured. The last train accident that we did, for example, the driver he'd injured his legs so badly that he will never drive a train again. And for him to reach some kind of closure was very satisfying to watch.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there must be loads of questions on the parts of all people involved with both vehicle and train accidents. So that would be a good thing, at least, to just have a little bit of relief, I suppose, let alone all the other things, legalities, money, all those kinds of things as well. So, as an investigator in general, how do you look at a case? Let's say something, the obstacle or the difficulty, the challenge is age. We spoke about an old vehicle accident that you worked on. How do you look at that and think, okay, I think I can do something? Because, just logically you think, oh, it's so old, probably not going to find anything. Do you have those kinds of thoughts? Or do you just think, I'm just going to go into it and see what there is, and then you get lost in it and kind of goes from there?
Any investigator that doesn't have those thoughts shouldn't be in the game.
Okay.
Because if you don't have a fear of failing at the investigation, you will not have the drive to push yourself for excellence.
So then, okay, let's go on that line. Then you come up with, so everything seems to be going well, and you've got this potential lead, and it sounds like you're going to be wrapping this thing up, and all of a sudden something happens, and that whole thing just falls apart, and everything that you've worked on basically is irrelevant, and you almost have to start from scratch again. Do you often feel like throwing in the towel, so to speak, or do you just see it as, okay, well, that didn't work, now let's try the next road?
Well, the first thing that happens is a lot of expletives.
Of course.
The second thing that happens is that we regroup as a team.
Yeah.
No man is an island, neither is any woman, and we all work together. And I don't have the ideas that my colleagues have, and they don't have the ideas that I have. So the first thing that we do is we brainstorm it. Never panic, ever.
Okay.
And once you brainstorm it, you can work out a plan, a tactical plan. And I've been in this business for many, many years. And when I've been working in a team, we've never not come up with a plan ever.
Okay. Okay. So there's always there's always something that you can do. It's not just, oh, okay, it's the end. Let's close this case and move on. There's always something that you could try or look at or step back a little bit and try a different angle.
Yeah. Things get hard like they do in any profession. But you never give up.
Okay. And just kind of jumping back to the witnesses, do you ever get people who are just being unnecessarily difficult because for whatever reason maybe they don't want to see the innocent party be declared as innocent, or maybe a personal reason, or whatever? So do you find witnesses who are just going to be difficult, and their difficulty is making the case obviously go sideways because they need to agree with the physical evidence, but they just sticking to their story because they're determined to have their way? Do you get that kind of challenges? I'm sure. I mean, particularly with vehicle accidents, do you find those kinds of challenges as well?
All the time. Witnesses lie. Witnesses have agendas. Victims have agendas. The drivers that cause accidents have agendas. So we always approach them expecting that they're going to lie. And when they tell the truth, it's almost a pleasant surprise. But we go in with our radar in our head switched on, always watching for the body language signs of lies, which are generally discomfort and things along those sort of lines. We can tell very quickly when somebody isn't being entirely truthful to us, and we have ways of turning that around. If a person persists in their lie, then we will go on and seek evidence elsewhere. So, because we have to build the case for the attorneys in such a way that they're going to have these same people that are lying in the witness stand at some point.
Yeah.
So we have to build a way for the attorneys to get around the lies and get to the truth. And that's what our job is.
Okay. But do you only do work for attorneys and insurance companies, or are there other clients as well?
Almost anybody can be our client. We are private detectives, which means that any party can legitimately hire us. But we are careful about who we take on as clients, because we have to look to our own reputation and our own integrity. And there are people out there who will misuse a private investigator for their own ends and their own agenda. And sometimes it can be evil ends and an evil agenda, and we're not going to participate in that.
Okay. Well, thanks so much, Noel, for your time, and for sharing your knowledge and expertise in this area with us today. I'm going to release you now. You can have a drink of water or something and take a breather. But yeah, thanks for joining us, and thanks for sharing all this information.
And listeners, thank you for giving us your time and listening to what we have to say. It's a privilege to do this for you.